Hello, EKN Nation. Welcome to a new edition of This Week in Karting, our podcast that brings you all the major news that has hit the EKN homepage over the last couple of weeks, brings it all into podcast form. Perfect for listening on the way to work or commuting home, whatever it may be, or maybe you're out in the shop working on the cart, getting it ready for the weekend. We'll bring you up to speed on everything that's going on in the sport right now. It is July the 27th, episode number 46 of This Week in Karting. My name's Rob Howden. David Cole, of course, will be joining me later on here in the show. Let's get things underway by talking about our presenting sponsor, Briggs Racing. Briggs & Stratton is powering Operation Grassroots around the world. No other engine manufacturer is getting new and returning drivers to the kart track like the Briggs 206. The out-of-the-box performance of the Briggs 206 provides the most fun, excitement, and reliability of any karting engine on the global market. Learn more about the 206 engine and the history behind Briggs & Stratton's commitment to motorsports at briggsracing.com or on Instagram at racebriggs. Last show was just over a week ago, July the 19th, episode 45. David, we're trying to get maybe into a more of a groove. You and I have joked over the first, 45 episodes that they kind of happen almost once a month or once every 3 weeks. But we're really going to focus on trying to get them more weekly. They may be shorter shows, but we'll get some more consistency so people can tune in once a week.
Yeah, I really missed this month in karting. That was obviously the name change I was going for, and it's not going that direction, Rob. You're making me work harder, and now I'm going to have to start bugging people. Hey, make some news so we can talk about it.
That's it. Yes, there could be some weeks it could be a 15-minute show for all we know. But we do have Nate Dean with us now, our new editorial assistant, who's done a fantastic job with us over the first couple of months he's been here with us. So you had him on the last show, and I'm sure he'll do a lot more This Week in Karting shows and more podcasts throughout the remainder of the year. But at least you're going to have some help doing the heavy lifting, right?
Yeah, in a way, because you're just kind of there, kind of guiding things and not really lifting anything. So
here it comes. Here comes the zinger.
You're more of the foreman. You're telling, you're directing things. And I guess, at your old age, I guess that's kind of the way it's supposed to be, right? You can't lift anything anymore.
I do own the website. Like I am kind of the boss.
Yeah, but again, it's just that old guy syndrome.
Wow.
That's what happens when you go to Legends, right? You need that.
What is
you either need a cart lift or a street or super stands that's able to raise your cart up because you can't pick it up.
Oh, I don't want to lift the cart up anymore, ever, for sure. Although, hey, listen.
You won't be putting weight on, right?
Let's just see. It doesn't matter how much weight I lose before the CKNA Grand Nationals this fall, David. My cart is going to be lighter than yours because at least Legends is a good weight as opposed to the Masters class, right?
It's the proper weight for old people. Correct. I agree with you on that.
Agreed. 100%. All right, let's jump into This Week in Karting. Those of you tuning in, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Hopefully you've downloaded the EKN Radio Network app, so you're listening on a mobile device. But David, obviously the big news that happened here, and as we record this, July the 27th, really has just dropped today to a certain extent, is the fact that the USPKS announcing their 2023 schedule. Really the first of any of the programs nationally, for sure, even regionally, that have dropped their schedule for next year. Here we are just into the second half of the season. The United States Pro Kart Series locking things down. And maybe the biggest news, David, and you highlighted this earlier in one of the earlier shows, USPKS going to 5 events for 2023.
Yeah, that's the biggest news out of all of this, is something they announced at Road America during the Badger State Grand Prix, that they're going to expand to 5 events for the 2023 schedule, which, again, we talked about it. Less is more. Obviously, they're looking at it and getting feedback that the race teams and racers want more. So that's kind of the situation that the series is in. And now we have a already busy schedule looking to be even busier in 2023. And another thing they announced, they were talking about January. That is not the first event on their schedule. As of right now, March 9th through the 12th will be Orlando Kart Center. Same facility they opened up the 2022 schedule with around the same weekend as well. So going back to the Orlando, Florida facility for a second time, that's where they had the record number of entries for the weekend, over 323 entries that weekend. So you got to believe that that's going to be a big and impactful weekend.
And David, we'll kind of jump into the schedule here, but essentially about 7 months in terms of the length of the entire schedule. March, April, off in May, back in June, off in July, back in August, off September, back in October. So as David said, second weekend of March at Orlando Karting Center. And then let's touch on a couple of the new tracks actually that'll be added for this year. In the April weekend, David, final weekend of April, April 27th to 30th, they're going to Texas, to Houston, to Speed Sports Racing Park, a track that I've been to several times. Love going into the Howden Tower, as Alan Rudolph dubbed it, the announcing tower there. But man, I'm thrilled to see a major national event like the USPKS finally going down to Speed Sports Racing Park.
It's going to be a interesting weekend. Again, we've talked about this facility being, a new home for national events in the Lone Star State, and we haven't really seen anything major go there. Texas Sprint Racing Series has got big numbers, and we saw that with their event this year. Nearly at the 200 mark in terms of entries. So you got to figure with USPKS averaging over 200 entries per event, how that's the biggest obstacle right now. The hurdle to get over is paddock size, and then where we're going to park everybody.
That's it. Right?
Thankfully, we have that. They do have a RV resort next to them, to where anybody looking to have an RV on site can be right next door and do not have a far walk to get over to the racetrack. But it all surrounds the parking situation because of the limited space that they do have at Speed Sports. But racetrack wise, this is going to be one of those racetracks that I think people are going to want to continue to go to, because as you've said, and many others have said, this is one of the more challenging racetracks in the country.
And at least 5 or 6 legitimate overtaking opportunities. You can pass on this racetrack in a big way, which I love.
Yeah, it has speed, a lot of technical parts, not a lot of elevation. From the photos, I haven't been there. Obviously, it's essentially flat.
It's flat, yeah.
So you have a lot of technical corners, where elevation is not going to help or hurt you. So it basically boils down to you making sure the kart goes where it needs to go. So I think that's one of the key aspects of that racetrack. But again, has that long straightaway, so it's got some good speed to it as well. And as you said, many passing opportunities around that course. That's always something, Alan Rudolph has talked about when looking at designing a racetrack, that when we talked to him in the past about, you got to be able to have the multiple passing zones to make it a good racetrack.
Yeah, there's three hairpins, and each has kind of a different entry into the hairpin, which is interesting. So March and April, Orlando and Speed Sports. They take May off. June, they come back to Newcastle Motorsports Park. Of course, David, one of the probably most used race tracks in the country in terms of national regional series. That's June the 22nd to 25th. Everybody loves Newcastle. And then taking July off, back at the end of August 24th to the 27th, essentially the weekend before Labor Day weekend and the Rock Island Grand Prix. Another new track to the schedule, and a track that I think people are seeing the effort that's been put in by the Bailiff family. And this is going to be one of those cornerstone racetracks on the East Coast. In that August event, David, they'll head to Motorsports Country Club of Cincinnati.
It's going to be, it's certainly been one of the facilities in the country that's seen a lot of renovation and a lot of time and effort put into it over the last couple of years. That's kind of been their focus. They want to put MCC. Right, three C's. There you go. MC3. There you go. I like that. On the national map, and in order to do that, they got to make it, a racetrack everybody wants to compete on, and they got to make it a facility that's welcoming. And I think that's those are the two big focuses that they've really put into it. Obviously, we've seen the repaving and the extension that they've done on the racetrack. So it's a super smooth racetrack. We just saw Margay Ignite Challenge program just race there. Yep. And the Route 66 Sprint Series will make their debut here next weekend. So the August, I'm trying to look at my calendar, 5 through the 7th. That'll be their debut at the Batavia, Ohio facility. They're trying to put it on the map, and no better way to do that than the USPKS going there.
But think about this, David. Route 66, Stars Championship, USPKS, Margay Ignite Challenge. like and their own program as well, right? Their own
WKA is going there this year as well too,
Yeah,
for their
right.
Grand Nationals. That's coming up after the Route 66 weekend here in August. So they're pretty much welcoming everybody
Wow.
to the facility. I wouldn't be, again, that's the only way to get people to know what your facility can offer, is to get them there. And that's exactly what the Motorsports Country Club of Cincinnati has been doing, is getting these big races, big events, big programs to their facility.
Yeah, and then September off on the schedule for the USPKS. I'll cap things off on the essentially what is the really opening the second weekend of October 5th to the 8th October. GoPro Motorplex down in Mooresville, North Carolina. David, that's where they'll wrap up the 2023 championship.
Yeah, that's when the award ceremony will happen. Again, I'm the only question I have right now regarding the schedule: how is the format going to be?
Yeah, you want to know what you want to know. Is it 2 main events? If they're running 5 weekends, do they run just the 1 main event on Sunday?
That's going to be the issue going in over the next couple of weeks and months, is what format they're going to run. Because have
you had conversations with them, David? I know you're in the know.
I put it in their ear, and
they're
obviously it's not something they're going to decide right now.
No,
obviously, the way they do things, they want to get racers' feedback and team feedback, and I think they wanted to figure out the schedule first. Obviously, with this expansion to 5 events, that's the big part of it. So. That's the only really question. Again, the January, is something going to happen? Could change if maybe, I know they were working on trying to get an event in January. As of right now, though, there's nothing in January set. So that and the format, those are going to kind of be the two questions going forward with 2023 program. But they have a pretty good baseline going into next season.
Indeed. Good stuff for the USPKS launching their schedule for 2023. Let's jump into some actual wheel-to-wheel racing just north of the border up here in Canada last weekend. The Cup Karts Canada program, which launched earlier this year in Quebec back in June. Of course, the Canadian program of what is now this massively growing Cup Karts North America 4-cycle Briggs program south of the border. They had their second race, and their first race actually in the province of Ontario, which is, of course, a hotbed for racing with 5, 6, 7 racetracks within a couple hours of Toronto. Big numbers, David, for the inaugural season. 138 total entries at the race at Goodwood Kartways, just outside Toronto. Again, 40 drivers in total in the senior light class. They ran senior light, senior medium, senior heavy, so a good spectrum for the senior drivers. Masters, junior and junior light, and they had a cadet class as well. But David, a full field of 40 in senior light, and maybe even we always talk about cadets, 21 drivers and cadets as well. For the first season for this Briggs program up here in Canada, I think it's just been huge for them.
Well, we already knew that Briggs was popular in Canada. There's no doubt about it. They had multiple racetracks, multiple different programs offering the categories. Yeah. But now we have kind of that stable Cup Karts North America program that we've seen here in the United States, offering this up in the country of Canada to provide them, hey, we're only running Briggs, because all the other events you go to, it's either a road tax race with Briggs, or it's rock race with Briggs, or it's such and such with Briggs.
Agreed.
So, excuse me. So this is the first standalone program in the country of Canada that's focused solely on Briggs. So a great starting point. Obviously, huge numbers. Very similar to what we see with Cup Karts North America North, and even with the South program, hovering with numbers close to 100 range as well too. So they've already surpassed what's going on down south, and there's obviously room to grow as they continue to look at what they can do for 2023 in this program alone, because that's, as we talk to them in their face-to-face program with us, they're looking to make this a really strong program, and they don't want to overstep, the limitations that, obviously racing through May and maybe October, and then also
mid-October, maybe. Yeah.
But also trying to work with the North program here and the South program here in the United States. So it's we'll see how this progresses, but to have two, strong events like this, it's a great start to this program.
Yeah, real kind of a fact-finding mission this year, right? Let's bring this up here. Let's get a feel for it, see what people think. They loved it in Quebec. It was a great weekend up at Goodwood as well. As you said, we had both Gerald Casely, who runs the Cup Carts Canada program, and Greg Jasperson join us on a face-to-face show on our YouTube channel. Of course, we play that as a podcast as well, talking just about the way they're trying to get this thing rolling. And it's just cool to see Cup Carts North America with their North program, the growth of their South program, now the Canadian program here on the East Coast. There's just a steady, consistent growth, support for Briggs, and it's good for grassroots racing, man. It's like you mentioned it up here in Canada. It's Briggs and another 2-cycle category. It's kind of always been that way ever since I was racing back in the 90s as well. You'd have 4-cycle and 2-cycle at the regional series. This is great to have just one regional series for the drivers, actually more regional / national because it's 2 provinces. But it's really good for grassroots racing, I think, in Canada. So kudos to everybody involved, Gerald Casely and his crew. I know a lot of the guys came up from CKNA to be part of it as well. Greg Jasperson and a lot of his guys came up to support it. It's just it's a good program, David. It's literally going to lead into just more people wanting to come to Newcastle for the Grand Nationals. This is the Grand Nationals. We know it keeps growing, but with the growth of South and the launch year of the Canadian program, man, that race is only going to get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, before the COVID, we saw a lot of Canadians coming down to come to the Grand Nationals. Obviously, the border restrictions has kind of limited that through 2020 and 2021. So we knew after the borders were opened up that the 2022 edition of the CKNA Grand Nationals is going to be massive. And there's certainly, we joked about the number that they were going to reach last year, and they surpassed that. And now it's kind of like, what exactly is going to happen for 2022 with all the Canadians coming down? And like you said, all the Southern racers who are now on board with the Cup Carts North America program, just how many racers we're going to have at Newcastle in October.
Yeah, looking forward to that one for sure. All right, folks, let's jump into our first break here in this edition of This Week in Karting. Again, Rob Howden and David Cole providing you with all the information that has worked its way onto the homepage of ekartingnews.com. When we get back, we're going to talk about Las Vegas. Stay tuned. More to come. History, success, family. Those are the 3 words that can describe Comet Kart Sales, one of the longest tenured karting businesses in the United States. The family-owned operation located just outside of Indianapolis has provided karts, parts, and services for thousands of racers in the near 6 decades of business. Their online store features everything you need, continually adding new parts to their product line. From full karting packages, new engines, spare or replacement parts, and safety gear, find it all at CometKartSales.com. Their Comet Racing Engine service has won multiple major events and championships over decades of karting and continues to offer the best trackside service in the industry, specializing in IAME X30, IAME Swift, and other 2-cycle power plants. Make sure to head to CometKartSales.com or call them at 317-462-3413 to be part of the Comet Kart Sales family today. Make that jump from the club level and race against the best in the country at the Texas Sprint Racing Series. The premier regional kart racing series in Texas is a 5-race program that features 5 different tracks, all in the southern portion of the USA. The Texas Sprint Racing Series kicks off the season in the Big Easy on March 25th, 26th, and 27th, hosting round 1 at the NOLA Motorsports Park in New Orleans, Louisiana, as a warm-up to the SuperKarts USA Winter Nationals. The series returns to the Lone Star State on May 20 to 22, returning to the popular Speed Sports Racing Park in New Caney, Texas. One of the founding circuits in Texas, North Texas Kartway in Denton, is slated to host Round 3 on June the 24th to the 26th. Round 4 travels to the Texas Panhandle and the Amarillo Kart Circuit on August 5th, 6th, and 7th. The 5th and final round of the 2022 Texas Sprint Racing Series travels to the MSR Houston Karting Facility in Angleton, Texas on September 23rd to 25th. Details surrounding the rules and class structure for the official SuperKarts USA and International Kart Federation Series can be found at TexasSprintSeries.com. Welcome back to episode 46 of This Week in Karting. Hopefully you're listening on your mobile device or maybe right on your favorite platform, whatever it may be. Of course, as we said, through the EKN Radio Network, your first opportunity to listen to any of our content. As I said before the break, jumping now, David, into Las Vegas. November, of course, October and November on time. This time just all in November. Karting has invaded Sin City. Both with the Rock Vegas event and the SuperKarts USA Super Nationals, which will celebrate its 25th edition this year. A monumental weekend, monumental season year for the Super Nationals and SuperKarts USA. The entry and registration, David, going open, and it took 44 seconds for the first entry to find its way into SCUSA's database.
Yeah, this is a story we missed on last week's This Week in Karting, so I kind of wanted to cover, the intrigue that is going to be the Super Nationals 25. Again, a monumental event that's going to happen. Entry actually opened the Sunday of the United States Pro Kart Series Badger State Grand Prix weekend. So literally, it was funny. I had just walked by Ashton Wood's pit and talked to his dad, and he was on the phone waiting for it to open. So I literally got to see behind the scenes him setting up and waiting for entry to open because, the mini and micros are based on entry. So that's where you leave the pit lane for practice is based on entry. So for the cadet drivers, it was a really important aspect of the weekend in Road America to be able to get their entries in, be one of the quickest, one of the first to do it. And as I said, as you said, Ashton Woons was the first entry, which beat out Hannah Greenmeyer by just 10 seconds as the first entry for this year's Super Nationals. So I thought that was a really cool story to see SuperKarts USA publish.
And here's the cool thing. So you got these two people entering super quick, right? The Woon family and the Greenmeyer family jumping on really quickly. As we've seen before, people want to dive in. In the first 24 hours, that registration available for Super Nationals 25, 200 entries coming in 24 hours. But maybe even more interestingly is that 30%, 60 entries coming from Australia, which I
more
thought
than
more than 60.
More than 60 entries. So that's obviously that's part of the Super Nationals is the international flavor that you do get at the Vegas event. And that's something that we've seen dating back to 2007 when, the first, factory drivers from Marco Artigo and others started coming over to race in the pro shifter category. And now we just continually see international drivers through every category at the Super Nationals. And I think that's with COVID restrictions down more. And obviously Australia, they've been locked down even harder than what we've been in the United States and Canada. They're able to travel now. So that's kind of the goal for a lot of the karters there who have been waiting since 2019 to come back to Vegas and come back to the Super Nationals is to race at this year's event. So I'm going to think we're going to have probably one of the highest international percentages at the Super Nationals history.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, David. As of yesterday, which is July 26th, over 300 entries being logged for the Super Nationals, which takes place, of course, the weekend before American Thanksgiving at the Rio All Suite Hotel and Casino. There is some interesting stuff that's happening because as we've seen through a lot of SuperKarts USA racing and a lot of other racing around the country, the Masters categories have not been overly supported with a lot of interest on national level racing. So what SCUSA is saying is, so for X30 Master, KA100 Master, which would be the debut for the Master category KA100 at the Supernats, and Master Shifter, they need to have 25 pre-entries by August the 21st. So that's almost a full month away, 3 weeks for sure. We'll see what happens, David. I know it's interesting to do this because I think a lot of the Masters guys, especially Master Shifter, maybe not as big a hurry, right? Yeah, I know I can enter later on. We don't have a lot of guys. X30 Master used to be actually the first class to sell out because people would be dying to get in there, right, at one point, David. But now, I think it's interesting because they probably would have waited until September or October, but now they're kind of being pushed to get it done by, late August just to make sure the class even is on the schedule.
Yeah, it was, went back when it was Tag Master, when it had multiple engine format was going. It was one of the quickest categories to sell out. Last year, I think X30 Master was they were capped off at No, they had 38 drivers. So,
Okay.
so I think that category, I don't think we're going to have any issues with getting that number up there. I think obviously the master shifter, we had just under 20 last year at the Super Nationals. So maybe get some, now with FIA, maybe doing the master category for shifter carts at the World Cup. Maybe we'll see some of those guys starting coming back over, because I know the master shifter category was still huge too, and had a lot of number of international drivers coming over and doing that, even when we had it was the stock moto program. But now that I think it's both KZ and the Miami engines, it's kind of the open format again. I think we're going to start seeing more of those drivers maybe possibly coming back. And again, you think about it, some of the drivers that are 30 that are international, could you imagine like a Marco Artigo or some of those?
He's not going to come and run Masters.
I know he's not going to run Masters, but I'm just kind of putting the baseline of like, that's, those guys are eligible. So maybe a guy who used to race, ICC back in the day, that's like 40, maybe he's interested in coming and racing Super Nationals. So that's going to be, I think master shifter is going to be the questionable one. And then of course, K master being the new category. Hey, can we get the number of participants needed to have this class at the Super Nationals? That's going to be kind of the driving force. But I think X30 master should be good. And you should see kind of the same familiar names coming back. Obviously, that everybody that we've seen at the United States Pro Kart Series, they're getting over 20 there. So I think you get a lot of those guys, the Martin Pierce, Matt Johnson, Derek Wang, Danilo Romalo, Renato Yader-David, Mario Barrios.
Right. Exactly.
All these guys, Miguel Mir, Scott Kopp, Carlos Calderon, all these guys that we've seen, race, Diego Pelosi. I think that's going to be the category that should reach that 25 by that time, as long as they enter. That's the hard part. Like you said, a lot of these guys are probably used to entering, say, September or even October. It's going to be the month of August is going to be for Supercarts USA to keep the pressure on the old guys and be like, hey, put your credit card down and put your money down, and chips are in. Let's get it done.
Do this. Yeah. And hey, listen, and for KA 100 Master, which is growing on the club level and regional level all around the country, it's the first time Scoot's offered this up. So if you're a KA 100 Masters driver, you want to see this event on the Super Nationals weekend on the docket, step up and get in, because that's what it comes down to, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of the teams could help with that too. You look at like a Trinity Karting Group, Rollison Performance Group, Ryan Perry Motorsport, a lot of these race teams that do have a lot of 100cc racers already. It's a great addition to their race team for that weekend, is to get the Masters guys involved in the 100cc side of things. And again, looking at the schedule, KA Master is in the morning, X30 Master is in the afternoon. So you could have a lot of guys that are going to be doing double dipping. So,
you're right.
If Mike Smith was man enough, he could probably do it as well, but he's probably going to, not do either. So
I love it. So right now, the only two categories. I love shooting barbs out like that. That's fantastic.
Got
So the only two categories right now that are being offered up for 88 entries, the two groups, is KA 100 Senior and X30 Senior at this point. So David Scusa saying that, and you can confirm this for me. So Scusa saying that they will expand Mini Swift past the 44 if they get 25 drivers on the wait list by August 21st. So another date requirement there for Mini Swift.
Yeah, you're going to have 69 drivers entered for Mini Swift by that August 21st date in order for that category to be expanded, because, again, that coincides with dropping either K100 Master or Master Shifter or X30 Master, or trying to figure out a way to make it all work and get all of that on the schedule. So, again, it's, a little time consuming and a little bit of a time crunch in order for people to get their entries in. But that's kind of, when you have a massive event, again, we're already over 300 entries already after, 2 weeks of having registration open, not even 2 weeks, or it's just over 2 weeks. So they got to make sure they have all the I's dotted, T's crossed to make sure this event goes off well. And I think schedule is a big part of it, making sure it fits and making sure it works with not only the race teams, but all the staff, and making sure everything's in order to make, again, this historic event, 25th annual event to happen.
Yeah, agreed. So Super Nationals 25 is going to be a good one. Obviously, the entries come pouring in already. We'll see what categories actually make the cut when it's all said and done. Before the Super Nationals, which takes place later in November, the Rio will have another race there this year on November 2nd to the 6th. Rock Vegas, David returning to the Rio. The plan is to get back to the Planet Hollywood location back in 2023. But for this year, with some of the stuff's happening around the area, of course, F1 coming to Las Vegas could throw wrenches in everybody's plans, but Rock Vegas, the Rockers, will be back at the Rio again this year as well.
Yeah, Rock Up USA is committed and has worked out a 5-year deal with Caesars Entertainment Group, which I believe manages the Rio. I don't think they own it any longer, but manages the activities that happen at the Rio, along with Planet Hollywood and other locations throughout Las Vegas. And so that's a key element, is that, Rock Cup USA is committed to keeping the Rock Vegas event going. It was probably one of the biggest events of the season last year, compared next to the Super Nationals and a couple other events that were a little bit bigger. Yep. But certainly, racing behind the Planet Hollywood was a cool little new aspect to it last year. Not exactly the parking lot they were hoping for. And I think that's one of the situations that they're dealing with. Obviously, you already mentioned the Formula One coming in for Vegas in 2023. So you figure if they haven't already, they're already starting construction and figuring out how to make that street race work with the tight confines of the Las Vegas Strip and all the surrounding areas where the racetrack is going to be going, including the paddock area. So there's a lot of unknown, at least to the public, unknown entities regarding that event and the future of that event and how things are going to shake out in terms of real estate and parking lots and space that's going to be utilized just for that event alone. And then how, where does Rock Vegas event fit in, and including the schedule, because, who knows how much what they're building during the month of November to get ready for the event in 2023. So a lot of unknowns regarding that event. But one thing we do know is it'll be back at the Rio. And it'll be, a little bit of a returning home for that event as well. And kind of similar to the Super Nationals. And again, a little bit easier on the teams because it'll all be at the same facility. They'll be able to kind of know, obviously, going in what to expect and go forward. A known entity, exactly. So a little bit more stress-free, a little less stress-free than what we had over 20 in 2020 and 2021.
Indeed. All right, let's have another quick break. When we get back, we're going to do a little silly season update for you. A number of drivers have been moving teams and moving chassis, and we'll also bring you a little bit of international news from the FIA. Stay with us. More to come on this edition of This Week in Karting. Run by the racers, for the racers. The Pad Holder Super Cup Series has been welcoming record numbers throughout the 2022 season at the first 4 events of the year. It's been a great season, and it's time to cap it off in style. Make sure you're part of the championship finale promoted by the Northwest Karting Association, one of the longest-standing organizations in the Pacific Northwest. The series finale will take place at the Sumas International Motorsports Academy Circuit in Sumas, Washington on August 5th to 7th. Head over to padholdersupercup.com to learn more about racing against the best in the Pacific Northwest. Powered by technology, DID racing chains have a worldwide reputation for superior quality and reliability. Meticulously engineered and manufactured in Japan, DID Genuine Parts are the world's #1 original parts supplier for Japanese and European motorcycle manufacturers. A rich racing tradition where results speak for themselves, DID prides itself on engineering the most technologically advanced chains on the market to help you excel on and off the track. DID's SDH pin treatment creates an extremely hard chromium carbide layer on the pin surface that houses a soft inner core to absorb extreme shock loads. DID's 219 HTZ racing chain boasts this SDH pin technology, which leads to longer chain life as well as excellent energy transmission to the wheels. Available in the gorgeous gold, the 219 HTZ is the ultimate racing kart chain. Pick up a DID chain at your local dealer today, because when winning is the only thing that matters, go with DID. Welcome back to the EKN Radio Network, episode 46 of This Week in Karting. My name is Rob Howden. It is July the 27th, 2022. David Cole joining me as we kind of work our way through all the news that has found its way to the EKN homepage. David, a little silly season, mid-season silly season, as we've seen a couple of drivers make some moves, and they're not just drivers that you see kind of mid-pack kind of guys. We're talking about some of the, two of the best drivers in the sport right now, Paulie Massimino and Danny Formal making moves mid-season.
Yeah, as we talked about in last week's edition of This Week in Karting, we talked about Paulie Massimino leaving Ryan Perry Motorsport. And at that time, we were unsure of where he would end up. And now that we do have an update on him, he's moving over to Speed Concepts Racing operation and running aboard a CRG. So going completely different charisma team and different chassis for Massimino, who is number 3 in the EKN driver rankings for tag currently right now, and is in the championship hunt in the SCUSA Pro Tour. So weekend under his belt with the CRG at the GoPro Motorplex Club race this past weekend, as we talked about in our outlap that's playing right now on the EKN Radio Network. So he's not going in this weekend with a completely unknown entity in terms of kart and what it'll do. So he's got a weekend under his belt, so he should be on speed and up to pace heading into the weekend for the X30 senior category.
Yeah, over the last couple of years as well, we've seen Danny Formal be one of the top drivers in Pro Shifter at the Super Nationals, at big events, national events throughout the year. Of course, he and Greg Bell teaming up with Leading Edge Motorsports on the Formula K. They've won a ton of races, and they've really kind of become synonymous with each other. Well, Danny Formal's also been moving into the IMSA world, into sports car racing, teaming up with another former shifter car driver, Kyle Marcelli, to run in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo program, and he's been doing extremely well. So Danny, with the focus of trying to get, of course, into a full-time racing career as a driver, but also the opportunity then arising for him to get a full-time position with one of the top teams. Of course, Danny raced for Leading Edge Motorsports, but this is a full-time gig. David, coming down the pipe, that Formal joining Rawlson Performance Group as a driver coach, working within the team, and finding out now that he'll actually be competing this coming weekend at the Summer Nationals, rather, at Newcastle. Don't see a lot of racing for Danny within the team, but more as a coach side. But he will be racing this weekend on the Cosmic. But a pretty big move for Danny Formal to get a full-time gig with Rawlson.
Yeah, that's the big news, that he is racing this weekend. We talked about it and in the last edition of This Week in Karting that he's joined Rawlson Performance Group mostly as a driver coach, as you said. Yeah. But we weren't sure exactly when we would see him put a helmet on and get back on the OTK brand, which he's very familiar with. He grew up racing OTK and a number of other different brands as well, too. But going back to OTK and racing Pro Shifter category this weekend, so making his Pro Tour debut on the season. Again, was a number 3 ranked driver in EKN driver rankings, but lost a couple of events. So he's fallen down the order a little bit. So this will certainly help put him back into the run, certainly. And then I would expect to see him in the seat probably at Super Nationals next. As you said, he's got all the car stuff he's got going on. He won't be in Vegas for Rock Vegas, because he will be in Portugal racing in the Lamborghini program there, trying to become a factory driver for 2023. So I would expect to see him race this weekend and then possibly again at Super Nationals.
Yeah, so big move, part of the silly season. A couple of top drivers jumping onto new equipment here this coming weekend, so looking forward to that. And I mentioned before the break, some news coming out of the FIA, CIK as well, David, a new engine program the OKN engine, using the current OK engine as the foundation. Give me some insight, give everybody some insight on what's going on here with the FIA and the motivation behind a new program.
I'm not really quite sure the motivation, but there is a new engine that's going to be homologated for 2023, and that is the new OKN engine. And the focus of it is I think it's more of a reliable engine package to provide, it's kind of a more affordable program for drivers who don't want to do the OK or OK Junior program. I think right now it's focused more on the senior element side of things, the senior drivers, and not so much the junior side. So it's basically based around the OK engines that are out there right now, but it is a limited engine, only 15,000 RPMs compared to, I believe, the OK engine right now going up to 16. So I think it's more of a reliability side of things to make sure the engine lasts a little longer. Does not have an exhaust valve, so that's one of the unique aspects of the OKN engine. And again, right now we have Modena, Vortex, IAME, and TM all involved in producing an engine for the 2023 season. And right now they're looking at two different types of carburetors. That's the unique thing. They're either going a bull type carburetor or diaphragm type carburetor, and it's going to be all based on what ASN rules you follow. So if you're in Italy, you got to follow which rules they provide, or Brazil, or whatever country assigns the actual type of carburetor you are required to use. And again, they're looking at trying to do a World Cup in 2024 with this category, limiting drivers to just one chassis, one engine, and 6 tires per race event. So this is a unique program. I think it's, I think they see the, kind of the sportsman side, kind of what we see in the US, I think right now the OKN engine right now here in the US is already the KA.
Yeah. Again, it's interesting, right? It's not something. The OK engine is something that we report on from Europe, right? In the programs there, WSK, whatever it may be. It's just not something we have over here in American karting right now. But yeah, it's kind of that focus on the sportsman. I like that term. It's a restricted engine down to 15,000 RPM, like you said. And the World Cup's going to be restricting to just a one chassis, one engine, limited tires. So you're not pulling different chassis out, you're not bolting on different motors throughout, whatever it may be. We'll see how it plays out, David, but again, you're right, it's similar to what we already have with our KA program.
Again, it's just another engine to a formula that, or it's another part of the equation we didn't need. It's just, I'm not quite sure exactly the need for it when you have all the, especially IAME and Vortex. They already have their sportsman style programs already, say IAME with the X30 and the mini Swift engine, Vortex with the Rock GP program that they have.
There. You're right.
The engines are already there. Well, what's the need for that? All I can think of is FIA wants to dip into what the engine manufacturers are already doing with their sportsman side of competition engines.
It also provides another platform and another formula for the OK engine as well, right? Because essentially it's the same engine as the OK.
It essentially is, but it's still a different engine because you don't have the exhaust valve. So it's a completely different engine to begin with that. Yeah. And then, carburetor, you can exchange carburetors on all these different engines as long as they work properly. Again, we went through that with the SSE engine, going from the bull to the diaphragm or diaphragm to the bull. It just seems like it's part of the equation we didn't need. And I think that's, again, one of the problems the FIA has is they don't have a pulse on what's exactly going on across the world in terms of karting.
Well, we'll keep an eye on it, folks. That's for sure. The FIA OKN engine program. We'll see how that kind of develops. Another break, and we'll wrap things up. When we get back, we'll talk about the editorial we have on the website. We'll let you know what podcasts are available on all the different platforms right now. We'll talk about what's coming up on the ECAN radio network as well. We'll cap it all off with a look at where we're going to be trackside with ECAN coverage. Stay tuned. We'll wrap up this edition of This Week in Karting after this break. The 27th edition of the world's largest street race for karting is coming Labor Day weekend. On September 3rd and 4th, the Extreme Rock Island Grand Prix will feature racing for everyone from grassroots to vintage racers to some of the best national and shifter kart drivers from North America, all at one venue. A total of 18 race groups will tackle the city streets of Rock Island, Illinois, with 2 full days of competition after the volunteer committee turns those streets into a racing festival overnight. Categories range from the popular Briggs 206, Margay Ignite, Yamaha Can-Am 100cc categories to the Vintage Karting Association and shifter divisions, all with opportunities to gain track time and chances to win by competing in multiple classes. The famed King of the Streets, as well as the King of the Rock races for Briggs & Stratton 206 and 100cc entries, will each pay $1,000 and the coveted Rock Trophy to win, as well as checks for the top 5 places. All other classes will race for Rock trophies, as well as second and third place awards. New this year, karters in different classes, but from the same track, can battle together for an overall 2022 Track Team of the Year award by designating their track or club name when they register. The Extreme Rock Island Grand Prix is the most fun you can have on and off the track. Learn more by visiting racerockisland.info.
Wins in the sport's biggest races and championships in national and regional series all over the country, they're all on Nitro Kart's growing resume. Nitro Kart continues to make its statement as the best, fastest, and winningest cadet chassis on the American market. In 2021, Nitro Kart won the 3 biggest crowns in America in the Micro Swift division, with Mateo Rosu in the SCUSA Pro Tour and both the Super Nationals and the USPKS titles with Keelan Harvick. At the Super Nats alone, 3 of the top 5 drivers on the podium got there on a Nitro Kart. The results are clear. If you want to win in cadet, get a Nitro Kart and join our team. At Nitro Kart, we're all about driver development. Nick Tucker and the Nitro Crew's racing resumes are extensive, and their passion for helping our kids learn is unparalleled. Racing is about consistent learning, and that's what we're all about here at Nitro Kart. Never wanting to quit, we've continued to extend the reach of our driver development program. In addition to expanding into the junior and senior karting categories, we've also launched Nitro Motorsports, which will field 2 cars this season in the Trans Am by Pirelli series, one being piloted by karting champion Brent Cruz. Not only can we develop your young driver, but we can also provide the platform if a move to cars is in your plan. And our second seat is available. If you're serious about your driver's career, contact us today.
Welcome back to This Week in Karting, episode number 46. It's July the 27th. And again, as we said from the top, we're going to start try to get these to be more weekly podcasts. They're not going to be quite as long, but we'll give them more of a consistent delivery for you. A lot of stuff coming out on the website, David, over the last number of days, over the last week. We've had a bunch of stuff that we pushed out, EKN original editorial. First and foremost, you decided you wanted to come up, kind of rolling off the All-Star game with the 2022 Karting All-Star roster. You took the time to lay out who you think were kind of the 3 All-Stars in a bunch of different groups.
Yeah, I had a fun time doing it last year to kind of pinpoint just 3 drivers, 2 alternate drivers in senior, junior, master, and cadet. This year we added shifter side of things as well. So we got 5 different categories. Again, we were seeing kind of an uptick in shifter competition this season. So I provided essentially the 3 drivers. Like, say, if we're going to go to the karting Olympics with these 5 categories, these are the 3 drivers I would want representing the United States karting programs, and then 2 alternate drivers as well. So it's fun to kind of do that and kind of hear people's opinions or agreements or disagreements and go from there. Just a fun little article to be able to do.
We dropped a little preview as well, article about the Rock Island Grand Prix. Our new editorial assistant, Nate Dean, putting together the King's Rule at the Rock Island Grand Prix article. David, one of the cool things about Rock Island for many years, well, over 2 decades now, right? They've had the King of the Streets. The Superkarts USA King of the Streets started back in, I think, 1999, I believe it was the first year. Joe Janowski winning that down in Oklahoma. Then Alan Rudolph won in 2000 at Quincy. Then it came to Rock Island, and it's been a home there, the King of the Streets. Then Rock Island developing other events as well, the King of the Rock, which I think 2 other King races, which I think has been a great addition to it. And Nate did a good job getting that article together.
Yeah, King of the Rock for 100cc, and then King of the Rock for Briggs 206 category. Those three. It provides those drivers who have raced there year in and year out, wanting to be a king, but yet not going up into the shifter ranks, allow them the ability to be a king at the Rock Island Grand Prix. So I think that's kind of the cool aspect of it. And again, it was able to connect with three reigning kings right now: Andrew Bodozo, Race Liberante, and Michael Dittmer. So all three drivers looking to come back and defend their crowns in each of the categories. The unique aspect, I think, though, is Race Liberante. He's going for all three crowns this year.
I love it. Fantastic. Again, that's the Labor Day Classic, the Rock Island Grand Prix. And also coming to the website over the last couple of weeks, we've had our EKN driver rankings. David spending the time to get things updated, heading into the Summer Nationals event, which of course throw two more results at the rankings, as we'll probably redo that again later here in Q3. Skip Arbor School, the sponsor of our EKN driver rankings, David, and the guys up front, number one ranked guys, have been there for quite a while.
They have been. AJ Myers, defending SCUSA Pro Tour champion, remains the top driver in the shifter kart rankings, while Ryan Norberg, four-time SCUSA Pro Tour champion and defending USPKS champion, remains the number one driver, and really the only driver I've seen over the 18 years I've been doing the rankings to have an average finish of 1 over his 7 races that count for the driver rankings. Yeah. So it's amazing.
Including a Supernats win.
Including a Supernats win, exactly. Again, it's a rare feat to see the average finish of your 7 races be 1.00.
Well, he just happens to be having the best year of his career. You spin off the Supernats last year, then into 2023. The guy's winning everything. It's absolutely amazing what Ryan's been doing.
Yeah, that's a good sign. Is this the best season he's ever had? I would think. I would have to agree with that. I
have to agree, right? Now,
that's a good question to ask him, though.
I like that. We'll ask him this weekend. Let me throw this out here as well. Just people talk about the rankings. This is something that we've been doing a long time. David, you said you've been doing it for 18 years. I started the driver rankings and the equation that we use in 1999. The very first issue of Shifter Kart Illustrated magazine had the driver rankings in it, and that was all for shifters at that point. But we've literally been doing the driver rankings for almost 24 years now, which I think is wild.
We have no idea what we're doing, Rob.
Oh my God, yeah, it's exactly
no
right.
idea.
We're just winging it. Podcast.
Ask Eddie Jars a crack. It's a great story.
I want to hear that one.
I love Eddie.
The EKN podcast, we've been having them kicking out. This one, of course, will be played on the EKN radio network. Others, the most recent ones you can get on all the different platforms. iTunes, you can of course get it from iTunes, Google Play. It's on Spotify. We're on Podbean, all the other podcast outlets. The last edition of This Week in Karting, which was episode 45 from July the 19th. It was just 8 days ago. That one's available now as a podcast. And as well, David, the face-to-face show we did recently, episode 56 of our face-to-face show, which we stream on YouTube and Facebook. You can watch the video on YouTube. But if you're a podcast person, we sat down and talked to Justin Stefani from Race Rotax about the rebirth, the regrowth of the Rotax program here in the U.S., the Trophy Series West and Trophy Series East programs, and the event they'll have in October, which will send the drivers to the Rotax Grand Finals in Portugal this year. The trophy final, U.S. Trophy Final at Newcastle in October. Great to take the opportunity to talk to Justin Stefani.
Yeah, I'm really excited about what they've been doing with the Rotax program here in the U.S. Again, got to go to what was the unofficial Grand Nationals in 2020 at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Was really excited about the vision they had and the outlook of how to grow the program. Again, focus basically at the grassroots level and go down, from the base up. Yeah. And that's kind of what they've done. And now they have the unique U.S. Trophy Final event that we're going to have in October to be able to hand out tickets to what is truly the Olympics of karting, the Rotax Grand Finals in Portugal later this year. So excited to be part of that event and excited to continue to see what they do with the Race Rotax program.
Of course, as I said earlier, the EKN Radio Network, your first opportunity to listen to any of the audio content that we push out. You can download that to your phone or your mobile device. The upcoming shows that we'll have, and of course, the only 24-hour, 7-day-a-week channel. We've got, of course, this episode of This Week in Karting. We'll be streaming on the EKN Radio Network. And after that, playing right now, is this SuperKarts USA Summer Nationals Outlet Preview podcast. That's playing right now. Of course, we're heading to the Summer Nationals this weekend. All the live coverage will be on there. We'll also have our post-race debrief show next week on the ECAN Radio Network. And one thing that we've just kind of locked in, David, for next week, you and I are going to sit down and talk with Alan Rudolph on our new episode of Face to Face. We're going to talk about the Alan Rudolph Racing Academy and the Speed Sports Racing Park in Houston, the track that Alan designed and is a co-owner of down in Houston. We talked about the fact that they have a new USPKS event coming next year. Also, they are having their own Lone Star Grand Prix this fall.
Yeah, lots of different things to talk to Alan about, and he's always a great person to have, and provides great conversation to the show.
So here's what's coming up, folks. Trackside, as we said, we're going to be at the SuperKarts USA Pro Tour Summer Nationals at Newcastle, the finale for that national series. That's, of course, coming up this weekend, July 28th to 31st. Really looking forward to that. After that, David, interestingly, it's very odd. We're taking a very Italian-esque break. No trackside at all throughout the month of August, but you'll be back at it again. Labor Day weekend, the Rock Island Grand Prix. We've talked about it already, but the Labor Day Classic once again set up. Should be a great one. We'll do EKN live there as well.
Yeah, excited for this weekend. Get to crown champions for the 13th season of the SuperKarts USA Pro Tour. And then, as you said, have the European break in August, and then go back to the streets of Rock Island Grand Prix, crown some kings, and have a good time on and off the racetrack.
Should be a fantastic weekend down at Rock Island. Thank you so much, folks, for tuning into this edition of This Week in Karting. We got another one hopefully planned up for you next week. It won't be maybe not quite as long as this one. Surprising, this is, almost an hour long with our commercials locked in here. So it ended up being a pretty significant show, Dave.
Well, Rob, anytime I'm with you, I just love to talk.
Yeah, I know you do, David. You're really getting into it. I like it. You're kind of settling into it. It only took you 18 years, but you're doing all right.
I'm a slow learner.
All right, folks. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. We do appreciate it. On behalf of Nate Dean, David Cole, and everybody else at ekartingnews.com, my name's Rob Howden. Bye for now.